Hi there, everyone. This is Mark Plunkett, the pastor of Heritage Presbyterian Church. This is our weekly devotional for June the 6th, 2022. Pay attention. June 6th. What's important about that day? Well, it's an early day in the month of June, starting the summer. True. But what's important on that day in history? On June the 6th, 1944, the Allied soldiers, Americans, Brits, French, all kinds of other countries, invaded France at Normandy. And when they hit the beaches, they were supposed to be able to surprise the Germans, but unfortunately the Germans knew they were coming. And they did some things well, and some things didn't go well, and that's how it is in battle. And I've seen these pictures 100 times, all kinds of pictures of World War II. And these brave men wading through the water and basically storming up the beach. And some of them falling. And when they fell, they weren't stumbling. They'd been shot and they were killed. Most of these guys, I would call them kids. I know that's not very respectful, but they were 18, 19, 20, 21 years old. They hadn't even lived their lives yet. And they were soldiers, and they were invading a country that the Nazis held onto like an iron fist, and they weren't going to let it go easily. But if we hadn't invaded, if we hadn't started the invasion, World War II would have dragged on and on and on and on and on. We had to smash Hitler, and we had to stop him. And the only way to do it was for the Russians to come in one way and us to come in the other, and basically squeeze the Nazis in between. And that's exactly what happened. So on June 6th, 1944, 78th anniversary is today, our soldiers waded ashore at Normandy and attacked the Nazis. I think of two Bible verses when I think of war. And when I think of the wars in the past, and especially when I think of the guys that didn't come home. A lot of them came home, and maybe they had post-traumatic stress disorder. Maybe they had terrible nightmares for years and years. We don't hear too much about the things that happened years and years ago, but we know they happened. We know that they happened. We hear a lot more about nowadays. But back in the day, some of them at least got to come home. Some of them came home limping because they'd been shot in the leg, or their arm didn't work because they'd been hit in the arm. In some cases, they'd been hit in the head, or maybe lost an eye. So there were all kinds of things that happened to our fighting men during World War II, and happened especially on D-Day. So I remember two Bible verses whenever I think about them. The first one is obvious. In John 15, greater love hath no one than to lay down your life for your friends. So those 18, 19, 20, 21-year-old kids that were soldiers that were fighting on our behalf, that waded into machine gun fire and God knows what else, and just into the teeth of the Nazi resistance, and they just kept going. So the words of Jesus echo in my head whenever I think of that. But there's another verse, and I'll tell you about it in a second. All of the parents, all of the families, all of the friends that had some of their loved ones that didn't come home, they never limped down the driveway. They never called from New York City or sent a telegram, hey, I'm home, I'll be there in a while, or anything like that. They never came home. And for those families, I think the thing that they would want more than anything is to know that their loved one did not die in vain, that they died for a noble cause. War is terrible. It is terrible. There is no such thing as a good war. But to defeat a wicked enemy at least makes the lives that were lost valuable, worthwhile, and not just done on a whim for some crazy leader that wanted to do this or wanted to do that. So I also remember a quote from Genesis 4, chapter 10. When Cain murdered his brother Abel, God came to Cain and said, "What have you done? Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." I think the blood of all of those soldiers and sailors and airmen that lost their lives, especially on D-Day, I think their blood cries out to the Lord. I think their blood shows us that they did not die in vain. They didn't just fall over like in the movies. They died. But they did not die in vain. Their blood cries out, and the Lord decides which side, which soldier, which army, which Air Force is going to ultimately win. That's the Lord's decision. We may have something to do with it, especially if we're stopping evil. but the Lord is the one that decides. So I think their blood continues to remind us we must respect their sacrifice. We must remember them and honor them on days like today. Amen.